Hey everyone, this is Reviews with Ryan. Today on the channel, I'm going to be doing an audio-only review of the new horror film, The Nun 2, and I have a special guest on the channel. I have my son, Jacob.
Hi, it's Jacob.
I'm happy to have him back on the channel. Our last review, Jacob, was 65 back in March. Everybody stay tuned. Here's our review for The Nun 2. The Nun 2 takes place in 1956 in France. A priest is murdered and evil is spreading. The sequel to the worldwide smash hit follows Sister Irene as she once again comes face to face with the demon nun. The film stars Taissa Farmiga, Jonas Bloquet, Storm Reid, Anna Popplewell, Bonnie Aarons, and Caitlin Rose Downey, and was directed by Michael Chaves, and he has done The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, and also The Curse of La Llorona. Now, me going into The Nun 2, the first film I really like, and I know a lot of people did not like the first one at all. I hear all the time on Twitter, Instagram, you name it on social media, people hate on that first movie, and I honestly don't understand why. Recently, I did a rewatch of that first film, and I gave that score of that film a 4 out of 5. I really loved the atmosphere of that film. I loved the way where it was shot. I watched a lot of the special features, so I really did like that film. And going into this second one, I did obviously watch a trailer and was excited to check it out. I hadn't watched anybody's reviews of what they thought about this film, so I really didn't know the consensus of what people thought going into this film. I do like that we have a lot of the return of the characters in here. You have Sister Irene, you have Maurice, aka Frenchie, back here. You also have Storm Reid. She was just in Missing. That was a film that was released back earlier this year. You also had Anna Popplewell in here. She plays a woman named Kate, and this is a mother that Frenchie is actually crushing on. And I haven't seen her since the Chronicles of Narnia, so it was really cool to see her. Obviously, you have Bonnie Aarons, who plays the demon nun, which I absolutely love her. I really feel bad for her right now because she's going through a lawsuit, I think, with Warner Brothers for her figures and stuff, and all this stuff that she's on. She's not getting paid properly, so I feel really bad for her right now. And she's great in this. She really has that nun character down to a T. In this one, I can understand that a lot of people may not like the constant jump scares because there is a lot of jump scares littered throughout this film. It takes place 4 years after the first Nun and also after Annabelle creation. And I do like here that we have Sister Irene, who is back on the trail after all these different priests are getting murdered. The nun is going through all these different priests and obviously killing them off. The church basically wants Sister Irene to go on this investigation and actually find out what's going on. And they're trying to figure out why the nun is actually spreading throughout Europe and just killing off all these priests. Frenchie is back, and you learn as to what his role is from the first film. There is a certain thing that happened in the first film that carries over to the second film, and you have Frenchie, who is at this boarding school working, and he has a relationship with this little girl who's getting bullied, and throughout this film he's also crushing on her mother, and that is his main role in the film. It does have a lot of different scares that it does throw at the audience, and I feel like they did a really good job of balancing those scares with different kinds of moments within the cinematography. Although I will say with this film, it feels like it is filmed a lot darker than the other film. I definitely feel like this is a film where you have to have a pretty good TV to actually pick up on the black levels that are in this film, because we were in the theater and we were sitting pretty close and it was filmed really dark. I could really tell that the filming was a little bit different because towards the end of the film there was some lighter scenes, and the actual film of how it looked, it wasn't as dark as throughout the film. So if negatives are bringing into this film, I would say it's filmed a little bit too dark, I think. Most of the characters, they have enough here, but I think for this plot, it is a little bit slower than the first film. I think also atmospherically, obviously the way that they actually filmed this one in actual setting, I do like that. I felt with the first film, it had a lot more atmospheric setting with the score. I remember in the first film, they had that big build-up moment with the music where it just felt really dark and just in your face. And if you turn that actually up on a sound bar, you can actually feel like the vibrations of the sounds. And I think the sound here, there are parts where it's a little bit more quieter, but throughout the film, there's a lot of sprinkled in sounds of like a loud bang during quiet times. So the film, it can feel quiet at times. I do think the investigation that Sister Irene has to actually do in this film, it's not a whole lot of investigating. It's pretty obvious who is behind these attacks and what is actually going down and some other characters that are involved. I do like the aspect in here of faith, believing in a faith to actually outcast the devil, because that is very present in this film. And that's very true with Storm Reid's character. She has a lack of faith, even though she's the sister. There's a scene with her in Sister Irene, and she's having a lack of faith. And Sister Irene tells her, in the situation of what she actually handled in the first film, that faith was a big part in her actually conquering the devil. And that is actually mentioned through an early part of the film, and I actually like that throughout the film. As far as scares in this film, I think for some people, they're going to feel a little bit cheap, and then for other people that don't really watch a lot of horror movies, they are going to feel scared. And I think it's just going to depend on the individual. There's one scene that really stood out to me in here, and that is a scene where you have a bunch of magazines that are flipping, and it actually ends up showing the devil. And they do a lot of different things in here where different scares are happening, where they use designs of different things to actually show the nun, which I really did appreciate. I thought that that was very creative. I thought they did a really good job of actually using the boarding school to actually build the nun throughout this boarding school. And I felt like overall the film, even though it has a slower pace and some of the scares are actually scattered about, I do think it's still a pretty good film. I did like one scene where they actually use the stairs in this boarding school where they shot this film, and they actually used that to perfection, because I felt like there were scenes and camera angles that really added to the suspense of that time. And there is a portion in the film where they do use a demon, which was really cool, and I really did like that about the film. It definitely added a little bit more than just the nun in there. And they do use some other different kinds of evil presence within this film, not just the nun, which I did appreciate that that was actually included. I think the top thing for me here, especially towards the end of this film, is the fact that it really does rely on a lot of faith and overcoming to believe in that faith to actually overcome the devil. And that is really my biggest positive about this film, because the story, it all makes sense. And it may not be the fastest moving movie, but it definitely does sprinkle in, I think, a lot for the horror genre. And now I'm going to turn over the mic to Jacob, and he's going to tell you what he thought about the film. Take it away, Jacob.
So I really thought the movie was really scary and fun to watch. Go ahead and get to my positives. My positives were that the editing that they did in the movie were great. It added a lot of action into it. I love the characters' lines and what they do in the movie. I would honestly see this a second time if I could. Now I will get into my negatives about this film. My negatives are that I have none. Overall, this is the best movie I've seen in 2023 so far. I really recommend that you see this movie. It has a lot of action put into it, and I think if you love to be scared and you love action, this is the movie for you. If you go see it, tell us what you think down in the comment section below. I would rate this a 10 out of 10, 100%.
Wow, a 10 out of 10. I'm really surprised that you gave it a 10 out of 10, but I'm glad that you really liked it. I don't think it's a perfect movie by any means. I definitely feel like I like the first one a little bit better, and that may be a hot take for some people because they didn't really like the first one, it seems like. But I think with this one, it is a little bit slower on points, and I feel like there is not really a lack of story, but I feel like there is some points where it slows down a little bit too much for me. But I do feel like there is still some scary parts in here, and I feel like there is atmosphere built in certain aspects of the film. As far as the score that I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. And I think with this kind of movie, though, it does feel like for some people there may be some fatigue with this series because now we've had many Annabelles, we've had a bunch of Conjurings, and I like this actually better than the third Conjuring because I didn't like the third Conjuring at all. I remember when that came out during COVID times. So I think they did a better job with this one. I think the story was a little bit better than Conjuring 3. And they do have a mid-credit scene that will be hinting to the Conjuring 4 because they had already announced Conjuring 4 before even this movie even came out. That about wraps up our thoughts on The Nun 2. Let us know in the comments. What did you guys think about the film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? And where do you actually rank this film compared to all the other films? Do you like this film more than one? Do you think it's just as bad as one? Where do you actually fit in the mold of The Nun and the Conjuring franchise as a whole? But thank you guys for listening to this review, and we will see you guys on our next review.